So I'm a little uncomfortable actually speaking at a rally instead of covering one, which is what I used to do with the stranger. Some of you may know me as David Goldstein. Some of you may know me as Goldy. And some of you may know me as a cautionary tale, the first person in America to lose their job over a $15 minimum wage. Or maybe it's hard to tell. I don't really know why I left the stranger. All I know is that the minute I did, they started advocating hard for a tip credit. So, coincidence? I'll let you decide. So what I thought I'd do here today is, as an ex-member of the paid media, I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about the media's role in the fight for a $15 minimum wage. And basically, I want to stress three tips for all of you as you continue in this fight both in Seattle and throughout the nation. The first one is, and this is really important, you guys all need to tell a great story. The second one is that in telling this story, you all need to choose your own enemies. And I'll get to that later. And the third one is that you need to use this movement as an opportunity to build and support an independent media because you cannot trust the corporate media to tell your story for you. Now I want to make my point on that tip number one about telling a great story, and I'm going to do it by a little exercise which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's a little call and response. So I want you all, you'll know what to do. I'm going to ask you, what do you want? 15. When do you want it? Now. And what sort of political compromise are you willing to accept? No. Oh, well, you had an answer. Obviously, 15 now is a great story. It's simple, it's to the point, you don't need to explain it. However, and I'm going to do this a little backwards now, I want you to ask me these same questions so that I can respond to you. I'm going to channel the business community and those on the mayor's committee who are putting together this incredible compromise. So everybody ask me. About $13.25 in 3 to 7 years based on the size of your business and whether or not you provide health care benefits. What? Yeah. Well, what do you think? Is that going to fit well on a placard? Is that going to work well in a chant? You guys have an advantage that the left usually doesn't have. The fact is the right has a much easier story to tell because the free market is a beautiful story. If you just free up the market, that invisible hand of God will reach down and make everything efficient and everybody will benefit. Sure, there will be some winners and losers along the way, those buggy whip manufacturers and their workers, but for the most part, you want to free up capital to do its magical job, and we'll all benefit. Yes, some will get richer than others, but we'll all do well. That's a beautiful story, and that's why it's so compelling. But also, it's really simple. It's free market. It's 2 words, and everybody understands it. You guys have 15 now. Now, to make the point of how important storytelling is, I'm going to tell you my own story, how it is that I got here today, very briefly. Now, I know some of you are from outside Seattle. How many people are from outside Seattle? Okay, a lot of you. Okay, so I need to give you a little background. Washington State is an initiative state where we can pass laws via initiative. Anybody can write one up, get enough signatures, put it on the ballot, up or down vote. Sounds great, right, very democratic. Well, in Washington State, we have this serial professional initiative sponsor. His name is Tim Eyman. Yeah. Who runs these anti-tax, anti-government initiatives, and he makes a lot of money doing it. And in doing so, he became one of the most influential political figures in the state. Well, about a decade ago, frustrated with what I saw were his abusive and ridiculous initiatives, I decided to file an abusive and ridiculous initiative of my own. And so I put up a website, I paid the $5 fee to the Secretary of State, and I filed my initiative to officially proclaim Tim Eyman a horse's ass. I sent out an email to friends. We all had a good laugh about it, and I thought that was the end of it. And then a couple weeks later, a reporter discovered my initiative on the Secretary of State's website, and suddenly all hell broke loose. I'm on the front page of the newspaper. I'm doing dozens of radio interviews. I'm all over local TV. And 2 days into this firestorm, I find myself in the studio at KVI, the conservative talk station, with John Carlson, the biggest talk radio host in the city, debating Tim Eyman live on the air over the merits of my initiative. And at that point, John turns his TV monitor around to show me my website, horsesass.org, live on Fox News. The story had gone national, and I had this epiphany, which is there is a reason why arrogant, obnoxious assholes like Tim Eyman get so much press. It's because he's provocative. It's because he's outrageous. It's because he gives great quotes. But most of all, it's because he tells a great story. And that is what the news media is in the business of delivering, great stories. If you give them a great story, they will tell it. But our media is so obsessed with being neutral and objective and fair and balanced that if they have this arrogant, obnoxious asshole on the right, they have this pathological need to balance him out with an arrogant, obnoxious asshole on the left. And it was at that moment that I knew that I could be that asshole. That brings us to tip number 2, which is choose your enemies. I chose my enemies well. I chose Tim Eyman, who was one of the most prominent political figures in the state, and he stupidly engaged me. In 2004, I turned the campaign website from that initiative into a political blog. Right around the time this right-wing blog took off and was getting all this attention. But you know, the media, they needed a liberal blogger, they needed somebody on the left, and that blogger at this very popular right-wing blog, he stupidly engaged me. And when my presence grew, I switched my attention to the Seattle Times editorial board. And from time to time, they stupidly engage me. You need an enemy, not just because it's going to bring you an audience, not just because it's going to give you a reason for being. You need an enemy because every good story has a protagonist and an antagonist, and it does not matter which one you are. It's true. The corporate media hates you. The political establishment hates you. There are people out there who agree with everything you're trying to do, and they hate you because you're doing it the wrong way. You're not doing it in a way that can be subverted by corporate donations. You're not doing it in a way that kowtows to the editorial boards. You're not doing it in the way that the left is supposed to do it in this country, which is through the Democratic Party, and that makes them a little uncomfortable. So when you're out there and you're talking to the press, I want you to make sure that you choose a good enemy. I want you to make sure that you pick the weakest, most ridiculous opponent you can find and say that that's the voice of the opposition. Sustainable wages would be a good start out here. Don't let them pick an enemy for you. You fight against the people you want to fight against. If it's a big corporation, it's a big corporation. If it's a crazy right-wing businessman, it's a crazy right-wing businessman. But don't let them tell you who you're fighting. You tell them. And then finally, very quickly, because I'm running over like I always do, the third point. What I want you to do is something really important from my perspective as somebody who started out as a blogger on the outside of the media, who turned that into a professional media career, and who maybe took it a little too far and finds myself on the outside again. I want you to support independent media. This is an opportunity to go back into your own cities and find the good bloggers, the good journalists who are on their way up, the people who can tell your story the way you want them to tell your story and the way they want to tell your story because they're with you on it. Because quite frankly, there is no such thing as objective journalism. That is a lie. And in the end, no matter how much a professional journalist may agree with this cause and want you to win, in the end, their paycheck is being signed by somebody who is against you. In the end, any journalist who is working for a corporation, no matter how good that publication is and how good they've been in the past, has to look over their shoulders to make sure they're not pissing off their employer. And they're not disappointing the person who signs their paycheck. So I want you to do something personal for me. I am at Goldy HA. That's GOLDYHA. That's my Twitter handle. I want you all to follow it. And I want you to retweet me whenever you see something I say, because that helps me build an audience. And I want you to go to horsesass.org, not .com. .com is usually a porno site. Though there are some on the right who say that horsesass.org is a kind of porn too. And I want you to follow me, and I want you to read the type of stuff that I write. And then I want you to go back to your cities and look for bloggers like me. And I want you to follow their Twitter feeds, and I want you to retweet their posts. Because when we build our own media, then we don't have to rely anymore on the media that doesn't really want to tell your story unless you force them. Good luck.
I would like to now welcome a leader from the Occupy Wall Street movement who helped to bring the concept of the 99% to the United States, Mary Clinton.
Thank you so much. So as an organizer, I don't cover rallies, I usually organize them. Like Goldie, I'm not used to the podium. Are you as excited as I am to be in Seattle right now? Okay, I was hoping so. I'm super honored to be here, to be representing Occupy Wall Street, which in 2011 that would have been very controversial to say. You know, for me, Occupy was about rupture. It was about creating an opening for radical action, for radical thought, and it was about filling a void for democracy, and a void of honesty that didn't really exist in the progressive realm. Through Occupy, we said capitalism is the problem, and we know we have the solutions. They said it couldn't be done, and I guess I'm standing here today because they said it couldn't be done, and it was so unlikely. There's too much police presence and militarization of the financial district. The media will ignore it. I won't do anything, and no one will notice. And that's what we heard, and we assembled, we organized. This wasn't spontaneous, right? It took a lot of hard work. And we reached out to people, and they said it would never work. And it did, and it grew, and it was very exciting. And we said to ourselves, it'll be gone Monday. No. To our surprise, it was not. And so we surprise ourselves, and that is something that I'm bringing here with that inspiration, that we can build towards this, that we can build towards 15 now. The first time I spoke, actually, for Occupy Wall Street was at the AFL-CIO Young Workers Summit in 2011 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I had no idea if Occupy would be a thing, but I was bringing a perspective that we can't have a labor movement that divides teachers and firefighters, that begs for crumbs at the table. We need to be talking about revenue sources. There's plenty of money, all right? And to my surprise, the young workers supported Occupy Wall Street, and that pushed the leadership of the AFL-CIO to support Occupy Wall Street. And if the unions can support an unapologetically anti-capitalist group, moment, whatever you want to call Occupy Wall Street, they can support 15 now. We know it can be done. And so I'm so thrilled that we have organizations that are running candidates on a socialist platform, on a people-powered platform, whatever you want to call it, that are fighting for working people and fighting for 15 an hour. Because it can be done. We know the system is rigged. We know it's not about the money for them. For them, it's about power. They don't want us to have the power. They don't want us to have the power to win $15 an hour for working people. So we have to change that power imbalance, and we have to come together, and we have to continue to organize, and we have to continue to build. And I'm so excited. We support you. Solidarity from New York. I'm looking forward to building a new world with you. And thanks for having me.
Peter Taaffe is the General Secretary of the Socialist Party, and I would like to invite him to join us.
Thank you for accurately pronouncing my name. I sometimes have difficulty with it myself. Now, comrades, brothers and sisters, I count this as an honor to be speaking here tonight and sharing the meeting and the platform with Comrade Sharma. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the victory of her and you here in Seattle has resonated, of course, throughout the whole of the USA, but it's had a powerful effect in Britain and a tremendous effect throughout the world. I can say that with some accuracy because I'm not just the General Secretary of the Socialist Party of England and Wales. I'm also a leading member of the Committee for a Workers' International that has organizations in 45 different countries. And I can assure you, that this victory here in Seattle has had a stunning effect. It has had a mesmeric effect on working people throughout the world, particularly in the neo-colonial countries, and above all in Latin America, where we have strong supporters of the CWI. And we've had workers coming up rather coyly and whispering in our ear, do you have anything to do with this individual, Sharma? And we say, yes, she's a marvelous comrade of ours. And then they say, but is she really a socialist? And we say yes. And she got almost 100,000 votes on a platform of struggle and as an openly socialist candidate for the first time in 100 years in this city. That is the music of the future, not just here in the USA, but I would say of the world. And why did it have such an effect? Because remember, America is still the richest country in the world, but it's also the citadel of world capitalism and of world imperialism. And the simple message has gone home. If they can do it in Seattle, we can do it everywhere and strike a blow for working people. We are doing it in Britain at this moment in time. The Socialist Party of England and Wales is putting up 561 candidates in the local elections and the European elections in 1 month. And we're doing that because we have stood individually. But we need to go much more than that. One comrade speaking here tonight spoke about power. We're all about empowering working people, giving them confidence in their own strength. And a step towards that is to stand across the board against all the pro-capitalist parties that include the Labour Party in Britain, that is now no different than the Democratic Party in the USA. There is no guarantee of victory. But just as Sharma stood first time and was defeated in time more in the election in Minneapolis, so we try again. The capitalists are determined. The capitalists and the bosses are relentless, but so are we in pressing the case for working people throughout the globe. And we are not just standing in one country like Britain. I visited South Africa last year, and I saw the marvelous black workers of South Africa. They were shot in the back. I spoke to the Marikana workers. The organization that they threw upon their shoulders, the African National Congress, the National Union of Mine Workers Union itself, actually used thugs to fire and kill 31 miners. That salutary blow led to those workers determining, we're going to break with this pro-capitalist party. We're going to organize our own party, the Workers' and Socialist Party, and they will be standing in the election in the course of the next couple of months. And I hope they will get at least one MP, a marvelous worker who's been there fighting alongside of the miners at the present time. And why are we so confident of this, the possibility of us making a breakthrough? Not only do we have the fresh example of what's happened here in Seattle, we also have our own history and our own experience, because we've done it before. We've elected 3 MPs in Britain who stood under the banner of our ideas in the past. We defeated the Tories in the city of Liverpool. We organized a council on socialist lines. That council defeated Thatcher in an epic battle between 1983 and 87. When Thatcher took £63 million away from the working people of Liverpool, we set an illegal budget. We organized 2 citywide general strikes. By the way, I heard earlier this day that the difficulty of organizing in the unions, and I don't diminish the difficulties of a conservative trade union officialdom, but we got the mass support of public sector workers in Liverpool. And moreover, in these elections that we're standing in, we have an alliance with the most militant union, the Rail and Maritime Union, which has got 70,000 members, who unfortunately the leader of that union, Bob Crow, died recently. They're in a coalition with us, the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. We know about right-wing trade union leaders, but where is it written that we cannot form an alliance with the ranks of the trade unions and form an alliance that can be successful in the struggle itself? We defeated Thatcher, but also we expressed in the language of the living standards of the working class. Reforms were implemented in the city of Liverpool. 5,000 council houses were built. So much building was taking place that the average worker in Liverpool thought that Trotsky was a construction worker, as a matter of fact. We built a special school. We built a park. We employed 2,000 of the most downtrodden black and Asian workers in the city of Liverpool. We showed in the language of living standards, the ideas of socialism, if you like, in one city itself. But we didn't just defeat Thatcher once, we defeated her twice in the epic poll tax battle itself. We organized 18 million people not to pay the poll tax. And if you get that many people prepared to stand up and say, we're not accepting an unjust law, then that law is cancelled out by working class organization and by the movement of working people. 134 workers were jailed, of course, throughout the country. 34 of them members of our own party. But we defeated not just the poll tax, we defeated the Iron Lady herself, who was reduced to iron filings by that movement and was actually forced to resign from power. I'll finish on this point. Why are you getting such an echo today? Why is this conference, in my opinion, and I've sat and listened and entranced by the contributions that have taken place. This will be seen as an historic conference. This will be seen as a conference where the forces gathered here today on a single issue are posing a challenge not just to the bosses of Seattle, but to the whole of the capitalist system. They say they cannot afford this very minimal demand. They cannot afford it. 85 individuals who could get onto a double-decker London bus have an income equal to the half the population of the world of 3.5 billion people. There are 11 million homes empty in Europe, and yet the army of the homeless grows at the present time. The blizzard of facts that have been mentioned at this conference shows what is happening under capitalism. There's no time to talk about the misery of the youth in Europe of 50, 60, and 70% unemployed. Any society that devours its youth like this is a society that's sick unto death and needs to be replaced. And that's why we are socialists. And that's why we are socialists. You are writing a new chapter in the history of the US working class. It's only the beginning. You represent the wave of the future. They represent the past. Full power to you in this campaign. And let us go on to build a united movement that will pave the way, not for one Sharma, but for 561 Sharmas throughout the USA. When we have that, we'll be able to change the world. Thank you.
Next up, Paula Lukaszek is a union leader from wfse, the Washington Federation of State Employees, Local 1488, representing thousands of state employees in this area, who has been tremendously supportive of 15 Now and tremendously generous. So please give it up for Paula.
I'll be real brief. My name is Paula Lukaszek. I'm the president of Local 1488. We represent a lot of different workers, actually about 2,600 at the U of W main campus, U of W MC, and Harborview. A lot of our workers, especially the custodians, the food service workers, and different classes of hospital workers, they make under $15 an hour. In fact, too many of them work a second job because you can't make it on under 15 with the cost of living in Seattle. This is why Local 1488 decided to support the 15 now. We actually gave a donation of $20,000, and we're looking for that was actually a lot of money for us, but this is a really good cause. The other thing we're trying to do is there's a lot of other locals in our state, state workers that we're trying to get to support this. And one of the reasons our council is trying to support this is because 1 in 10 state workers for general government make under $15 an hour. You know, that's just way too high of a figure. In spite of the fact that the Seattle Times constantly says state workers are overpaid. How can you be overpaid if you're making 11 bucks an hour? You know? I want to talk about one other of our locals up in Bellingham. There were a lot of people up there that were making less than $15 an hour. So they did a survey and they presented to the administration when they were bargaining how many of their full-time employees were on food stamps. And they shamed that administration into bringing people up to at least 15 bucks an hour. You know, it's a shame if you're having to work full-time and you still qualify for food stamps. So the last thing I wanted to say is that my employer, the University of Washington, is a large corporation. They can afford to pay $15 an hour to every employee there.
Goldstein. I would now like to welcome Carlos Hernandez, leader of the Seattle Fast Food Workers Strike and Movement. Please join us.
I know that people always tell me that I need to speak a little, I don't know, higher, but with a microphone is cool. It seems like right now it is like a big dream, you know, when I start to get involved to know about the fast food strikes. A lot of people who were talking about $15 an hour what seems as crazy people. And I remember at Seattle Central Community College, I am a student there, and I work there a part-time. I remember being there and see the Occupy movement. I think that is amazing, and that they really made people conscious and more aware about inequality in the United States. And I feel that Occupy deserves a big, like, here. Because it is very easy to feel isolated when you are thinking about something. It is very easy to feel that you are not part of something. As humans, we had that necessity of being part of something. When you feel isolated, it is very hard to, you know, to be part of a group or to say your opinion. And something that I noticed in this country, and they had find a very good way to keep people isolated. People is working like 2 or 3 jobs. They have families, some of them they are students, some other people don't, but people doesn't really have now too much time to interact each other or, you know, to have a great conversation. And we had TV always telling us that everything is okay, that we shouldn't worry about any problems. We had a lot of Hollywood stars from movies, rappers telling us what kind of shoes to wear, or what kind of t-shirt to wear, or what kind of shoes, or you need to be buying the new iPhone every 6 months that is coming out. I mean, and that's it's how I see it, like, we have become very isolated, that the only time, most of the time, to get a conversation will be online. People on Facebook that will have, you know, because you will find people there online most of the time. But I just want to put out, in my building. I have been living there for a long time, and I doesn't know most of the people that is there. I almost never see them, and when I get to see one of them, I am like, yes, and I get their phone number and all the stuff. But you doesn't really get to know your neighbors here. Or, for example, I think about someone's made a joke here when we were choosing about mortgages, about what do people own now. In the United States, almost no one owns a house. They own mortgages. Students, for example, they don't have this many things to see to the future, because education every time is more expensive, and what you get all the time is like loans that you need to pay. So how I see it, 15 now and $15 an hour here in Seattle is bringing people together and bringing people to recognize the inequality that exists, recognize social problems. And it is very important that we recognize social problems, that we recognize that we need to be together to be able to actually accomplish something, because if we don't get together and we don't do these things together, we don't get organized, we don't get to know what is happening, will be very hard to actually do something. And what I see is $15 an hour right now is as a way bringing people together. The people that before was feeling isolated, they actually feeling that they had a voice. And it is amazing that we right now are talking to put the valley for $15 an hour minimum wage. And we are the only city that are actually talking about putting a ballot right now in the Congress. And we had Chama, Sawan, that we know that represent people and not corporations. Thank you so much.
Enlightened. I would like to introduce the Black Agenda Report's Glen Ford.
Power to the people. All of you have done very impressive work today, and it's a great pleasure and an honor to witness up close such wonderful and loving people as you who have scared the shit out of the rulers. And you have scared them shitless, not just in Seattle, but from coast to coast, and now we learn from our brother from Great Britain all over the world. That's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to behold. Mayor Ed Murray is clearly having palpitations. We could feel him all the way in New York. I read in the New York Times on the way in that Mayor Murray fears that the fight for $15 an hour might lead to class warfare. Drumbeat. As if we haven't had class warfare for as long as we've had classes. Mayor Murray's statement shows how self-styled liberal Democrats like him share essentially the same worldview as their Republican counterparts. The only difference is in their tone and how much race they inject into their tirades. Mayor Murray's real job is to get you to call off the resistance to the class war that's being waged by the rich people that he serves. When he says that 15 Now's determination to see this fight for a livable wage through to victory raises the specter of class war, he is calling you the aggressor. He's saying that you started this war, that you are the destructive parties. He is calling you the enemy. And that should tell you that he is as much your antagonist as the race-baiting Republicans. Malcolm X's analysis from the 60s is just as correct today. The choice between Republicans and Democrats is the choice between a wolf and a fox. Mayor Murray is a fox, but you are making him show his canine characteristics, and that is a measure of your great progress so far. I read a line in the current issue of Socialist Alternatives newspaper that said, I'm going to quote it here, "The starting point for socialists are the living conditions of working people and the power they possess in society." And of course, the power that working people possess in society will determine their ability to change their living conditions. And one of those conditions is wages. So yes, the struggle for decent wages must be a struggle for power. When we say all power to the people, we're talking about overturning the power of capital to decide the conditions of people's lives. We know what capital's plan is. We've lived under that plan. We've experienced that plan, especially in the last several decades. They constantly consolidate the power of concentrated capital in fewer and fewer hands. As our brother from Great Britain said, 85 people, 85 individuals having more wealth than more than 3 billion of the rest of the Earth's inhabitants. The demand for $15 an hour represents much more than a few dollars more in people's pockets. It says that you are refusing to join their race to the bottom. It means that you reject the Lords of Capital's declaration that the race to the bottom is inevitable, and that you challenge their power to organize the world in this way or any other way that they decide. You are rejecting. You are rejecting not just their arguments, but their legitimacy itself. That is what makes the mighty tremble at the simple and very straightforward demand for a wage hike. It's not about the money. They can live with the cost and they can pass it on. It is that this demand runs directly counter to capital's quest to totally dominate the terms of life everywhere in the world and to suppress working people's standards of life and their very expectations of what life is supposed to be all about. This demand and the fierce popularity of this demand challenges the whole direction of the neoliberal project. You are truly seizing the time, as we used to say, and we at Black Agenda Report salute you. Power to the people.
It makes me speechless to finally have a leader that does this city's working class justice. And I would like to welcome Shama Sawan.
My sisters and brothers, everything that we've been seeing today and so far in the movement reminds me of something that a writer from The Nation wrote about our movement recently. The first sentence of his article was, "There's an old school revivalist fervor to our movement." And he is so right. We are reviving those days of genuine struggle, and the vocabulary is changing. And today's event is really a reminder of how far we've come in such a short period of time. A speaker who spoke before me said that even a short while ago, even a year ago, the demand for 15 was laughed at. And it's and I'm going to talk about the mayor's committee, obviously, but the fact that the mayor, less than a month before election day, came out in support of 15 and formed the committee, the Income Inequality Advisory Committee, as the first order of duty when he took office, is a sign of our success, not his loyalty to the demand for $15 an hour. It's the fact that fast food workers had the courage to walk out. It's the fact that the labor movement and low-wage workers themselves went door to door in CTAC, convincing people that $15 an hour was correct, was justified, and would be good for the economy. And the highlight of this past week has been that the committee has not delivered. And the mayor said, and to be honest with you, to me and to many of us, it's not a question of timing in the sense that if we were to get something great 2 weeks from now, I would be fine with that. That's not the point. What the mayor said was that, in explanation of why the committee had not come up with a recommendation and why he did not make a recommendation himself either, as he had said he would at the end of April, he said at his press conference, "I would rather take longer and get it right than rush it and get it wrong." So if the committee was to take 2 more weeks and get it right, that would be fine. I would support that. The problem is not that they didn't get it done on Thursday. The problem is the substance of the deal that is being discussed by them. And whether we got it on Thursday or 2 weeks from now, it's not a deal that works for us, it's a crappy deal. The labor representatives on the committee and myself put forward a proposal. Big business goes in to 15 right away. Small businesses under 250 employees and nonprofit human service providers get 3 years of phase-in. We get a cost of living adjustment every year, and we don't have any tip credit, total compensation, teenage wages, or training wages. This proposal was not taken seriously on the committee. We say this is a very reasonable proposal, given the extent to which workers have been pushed into poverty. Every year of phase-in means another year, yet another year, that a worker is going to remain in poverty. We don't talk about phase-ins lightly. We know this is real people's lives. And from our standpoint, that is a concession. That is a concession that we were willing to make in order to meet the other members of the committee. So why did the committee not discuss it? And this is the real problem with the committee. The committee includes me and labor representatives, but it also includes the Chamber of Commerce. And when it includes the Chamber of Commerce, it includes Starbucks, McDonald's, Amazon.com, Boeing, Microsoft, all the big corporations. The committee includes people, business owners, who both funded the anti-15 campaign in CTAC and actively spoke against it. The committee includes opponents of the paid sick leave initiative in Seattle 2 years ago. This was the committee that was formed, and we pointed out from the very outset that this is an artificial coming together of 2 groups with completely divergent goals and loyalties. Our goal is to fight for a strong $15 an hour. Our loyalties lie unambiguously with low-wage workers and the working class of Seattle. The goal of the business owners on the committee is to maximize their profits, and their loyalty lies only to their private profit margin. There is an inherent conflict between these two. The mayor said that he has a majority on a proposal. And what is this proposal? The stranger leaked this proposal. It has a 3 to 4 year phase-in for big business, which means that while the CEOs of Starbucks, McDonald's, and so on are making an average of $9,000 an hour, they get another 3 or 4 years when they will be paying their workers, the workers who run the coffee shops, they will be getting another 3 or 4 years to keep those workers in poverty. The proposal also says 5 to 7 years phase in for small business. It says a small business is defined as any company under 500 employees. The only people who think that that's a small business are the businesses themselves. The proposal also includes tip credit, healthcare credit. We are told that those credits will be phased out at the end of the phase-in period. So there's a phase-in, phase-out. You have to keep all this straight. Let's not forget what has happened with the Bush tax cuts for the rich. We were told they would be phased out. Let's not swallow these promises because we know they won't be upheld. If we agree to a phase out now, 2 years later they will be telling us, well, we can't phase it out now because there will be massive job loss. We know they're lies. The proposal also says there is no cost of living adjustment until the phase-in period ends. Either they don't understand mathematics or they think that we don't understand mathematics. We would like them to clarify which it is. As the Alliance for the Just Society and other living wage calculators have stated, workers need, to have a bare existence in Seattle, given the cost of living. We need at least $15 an hour in today's dollars, which means that if you don't get an inflation adjustment every year going forward, then the 15 that you get is going to be in name only, not in the purchasing value of the dollar. We understand this, and we've been trying to patiently explain this. Some of you who may have read the comments on the Slog article know what people's reactions have been. And I wanted to quote just one of them who said, this is a low-wage worker who said about the 7-year phase-in. He said, "Dear Mayor, if I phased in my rent over 7 years, will the police not evict me?" That's true. Yes, we'll see if the mayor agrees to that officially. Mortgage payment phase in, electricity bill phase in. In reality, my brothers and sisters, the proposal that is under discussion right now is a Christmas wish list for big business. The mayor said he wants a supermajority because he wants to get things right. I do believe his definition of getting things right might be somewhat different than our definition of getting things right. While he is preoccupied, and while the political establishment of Seattle is preoccupied with getting a supermajority on this artificially appointed committee, we have a supermajority in Seattle. 70% of Seattle wants a strong 15. That's the supermajority we care about. And I wanted to mention this just in case you run into people who talk to you about this. One Seattle, the AstroTurf pretend organization created by big business, had their own poll, conducted their own poll, in which they asked a loaded question. They said, "Do you support this proposal by Socialist Council member Kshama Sawant?" And yes. And they've used this poll to tell us that support for 15 has diminished. I would say that if, and it shows that it's not 70% or 68% anymore, but it's 49 or close to 50% now that's supporting. So they're trying to convince us that support has fallen by roughly 20 percentage points. But I would say that if the question says this is a proposal by a socialist, there's a little bit of red baiting there, and yet if 50% of Seattle agrees with it, I take that as a vote of confidence. And regardless of what happens with the committee in the next few days, our task for the coming period is clear. We have to continue to build the movement, and as Peter Taaffe said, we have to be relentless in doing it, never forgetting that the forces that are arrayed against us, the forces of big business, the forces of the super wealthy, the forces of capitalism, are going to be relentless, and we cannot give an inch. The City Council will be involved in deliberations sooner or later. We have to be out on the streets with our signature collecting campaign and our campaign of conversations. We are on a campaign to win over people we know agree with us, but aren't there yet. So our task every morning, our challenge should be talking to people we haven't talked to before. And I say this often to my fellow activists, if you spend the day talking to people you already know, you haven't done your job. Talk to people you don't know. And let us hold the feet of the City Council, the city establishment to the fire. Let them never forget that we are out here, we know, we are watching, and we demand that this year end with a strong $15 measure. We're collecting these signatures as a safety net to make sure that we don't put all our eggs into the City Council basket. And it's also a reminder to the City Council that this is what will happen. The mayor, as Glen said, has talked about class warfare, with reference to taking it to the voters directly. And in the recent press conference, he said he wanted to avoid a mini class warfare. And, obviously, as other speakers have said, this is capitalism, this is class warfare, and it's not a mini class warfare against the working class. It's a gigantic class warfare. And this is happening all over the world. What is different in Seattle today is that workers are starting to fight back. And just quickly before I forget, the city establishment, the political establishment has taken this approach of trying to achieve a supermajority or consensus on a committee that includes a who's who of big business, with the logic that if they didn't do that, they wouldn't be able to neutralize the counterattack from big business that would be sure to come. So they want us to think that they're doing this for our own good. But let's be clear of the truth here. As people have said before, this is not about money itself. If you look at the bottom line of McDonald's and Starbucks, they could easily afford to give us $15 an hour. They understand. They're clear. The more intelligent members of the capitalist class understand that this is not just about money. This is a power struggle. And if the working class succeeds in winning a strong 15, it will send a strong message to the rest of the members of the working class that it is possible to fight back and win. And whether we do get it done through the City Council or through a charter amendment, big business will be on the rampage. Regardless of the mechanism, they will fight back because they understand it's a direct challenge, it's a direct defiance of their domination. And so when the political establishment tells us that they need to have this whole committee be happy, they're engaging in political sort of acrobatics by trying to hide the fact that big business will fight us no matter what. And we have only one weapon against the counterattack of big business: ourselves, our numbers. The only thing that will stand with us is if we fight together and if we expand our numbers every single day. And that is what we need to keep doing until we can win. And then our job will not be done. Our job will not be done after winning 15, because we have to continue building the movement, because we know that winning 15 will not solve all problems, but winning 15 will give us a starting point to rebuild the mass movements of the American working class. The labor movement has a tremendous responsibility on its shoulders. The labor movement has the resources, the wherewithal, and the people to really organize and lead a mass movement in Seattle. And I want to call out or give a shout out to the unions that have played an exemplary role in 15 now. wfse 1488 and IBEW Local 46. They are showing what labor leadership should be doing all over the nation. And I'm really honored to have them with us. Those of you who have come from outside Seattle and from outside the United States, please take our greetings from the Seattle's working class to your working class and tell them that we stand together with them. And we would not be able to succeed in defeating the forces of capitalism unless we built not just a regional and not just a national, but an international movement of the working class. I also wanted to take a quick moment to thank everybody who organized this really magnificent event. It's not easy to organize a day-long event, and I think we owe a debt of gratitude to everybody who helped organize everything from the coffee to the sound system, and a special shout out to Bob Barnes and everybody here who's helping us. Thanks to Franklin High School for hosting the event. Thank you to everybody. What? Right. Thanks to everybody. Did you say you're a graduate of Franklin? Okay, that's why. Thank you to everyone who has already poured in time and financial resources into 15 now. You know that will be well spent. Thanks to everybody else all the organizations who have stood by 15 now and taken this fight on their own shoulders. Thank you to the Occupy movement. And let us not forget that our victories in Seattle are going to reverberate throughout the nation and throughout the world. Let's keep fighting. Solidarity.